check, and let's see, can you hear me okay? If you can, and you can raise your hand, that would be great. I just want to make sure that we have audio before we start recording. Okay, thanks, Cassandra. Okay, great. Well, welcome to today's webinar, and my name is Patrick Halson. I'm at Qdabra here. We just when you thought we had nothing new to say about InfoPath, we've got a quick new technique for you here, and we'll be going through that. Today's webinar about 20 minutes or less. First off, we released our newsletter this week, and I want to, if you haven't seen it already, I wanted to make you aware of it. We try to get this out once a quarter. Sometimes it's a little bit more infrequent, but just wanted to quickly go over this. This is our advertisement for the webinar. Actually, our advertisement is part of the webinar. We have to do something to justify the cost of these. Anyway, just want to direct your attention to our newsletter that we released a couple days ago. In this newsletter, we're talking about, of course, future eForm strategies, and I've got 6 criteria here to help you decide on a good replacement for InfoPath if you're thinking about that down the road. Obviously, we would expect most people to start thinking about that in a year or two, so no hurry on that. Microsoft's going to be supporting InfoPath until 2023. But if you're concerned, you might want to take a quick look here. We've also been blogging on this recently. We did an After InfoPath series starting in January, and we covered many technologies. We had 13 different webinars earlier this year, and you can access those webinars from our homepage. If you go to our training over here on the lower left-hand corner of our homepage, we've got our training up here, and you can go back to January, February, and you can click on these, and they're free YouTube videos. For the After Webinar series, we didn't include any packages because we're really looking at other technologies. Anyway, wanted to focus, after we looked at all 13, or actually we looked at more than 20, we took a step back and realized that we didn't want to kind of confuse too many people. We want to recommend a few technologies, and so we've done so here. We've also got another one, PDF share forms, that should probably be in this list. We'll be doing a webinar on PDF share forms in a couple weeks. But the reason why we recommend these technologies are that they meet most of the criteria. InfoPath still is the most recommended technology for forms because it meets all these criteria. It's easy to use, and it's still supported. But there are some alternatives that you can start looking at, including an in-house version of a technology that we are working on to replace InfoPath. So if you're worried about your forms not working anymore, we have a backup for you, and it's free. We've also talked a little bit about our product releases. For those of you who have Qdabra products, we have some information there for you, and we have some upcoming training classes. We have new training classes available now. We're doing an eForm, we call an eForm Future and Migration Strategy webinar, and that's next month. And this is going to kind of cover best practices, cover how to create a plan of action to migrate your forms. So for some of you who are concerned about InfoPath and moving your data to another platform in the future, you might want to take a look at that. It is a very inexpensive class, and it does come with all the samples and demo materials. Okay, so that's it for my little advertisement. Also, one more promotion here. We just released QRules 6.1, actually it was in June, and we typically refresh it every quarter. So some of you who are using QRules know that on the 15th of every quarter, September 15th, December 15th, and so on, we put a new version out there with updates. For those of you who have not become QRules users and you want to, we have a special deal. And if you're interested in this 20% off deal, please don't hesitate to contact me. And you can just send email to support@qdabra.com, and you can ask for the deal. And then for those of you who have QRules and want to get some money off, we will cut $100 off of your renewal license if you're interested in that. So that's just a freebie there for people watching today. So let's talk about field change tracking. What is it and why do you care? Well, field level change tracking is different from other forms of change tracking. And before we get started, maybe it would make sense to do a quick poll. So we're going to do a quick poll here, and let's see if I can get this right. Okay, so we've got a quick poll for you to take a look at, give me some feedback here on whether you use change tracking or not. If you could quickly just check on these boxes here, I appreciate it. There are more boxes than usual. Appreciate your patience with it. I'm just going to go, let's see, we're at 33% voted. I'm going to give it 5 more seconds here. 63, that's great. So curious, but some of you actually are already using field level change tracking, and that's great. There's 16% of you are using it already. Curious to how you're using it. Why are you in this webinar? Maybe you're just verifying that you did it the right way. That's great. And then there's 15% actually said that they use it via click on a button. 25% use it via SharePoint versioning. We don't have anybody using it with our DBXL auto versioning. That's disappointing, but whatever. And then there's 45% of you that are not interested, which or are here but don't have it yet. You are interested. So thanks for that. And I just want to talk about different kinds of field level, not different kinds of field level, but different kinds of change tracking. So you can, as the poll said, you can do change tracking on submit. You can do change tracking when a user clicks in a form. You can have the user actually add a change history comment manually to the form as they're filling it out. You can also do it using field level change tracking. And in the past, we have kind of downplayed this later, the most detailed option, the most granular option is the field level change tracking. We really haven't promoted it much because it's quite a bit of work, but we finally got a simpler version working, and that's kind of why we're here today and excited to show this to you. So typically, you're going to use this. We had a customer several years ago, an emergency room in Seattle, and they have patients come in, and they have an InfoPath form on a tablet. And they have many doctors that need to check off boxes because you don't know what the emergency room patient's issues are, right? They could be having a heart attack. They could be having some kind of a shock, a toxic shock, or whatever. So when the patient comes into the emergency room, they have to sort of hand the patient between doctors. So there's many people filling out this form, and for auditing reasons, they wanted to make sure that they knew who was making the changes to each field. And it was very tricky, and we, essentially at that time, it was just too hard to do given the complexity of the form they had. But today, we have a simpler technique. So the reasons why you want it are to keep track of those multiple people filling out the form. And of course, you can use SharePoint versioning today, but the problem is that it only does it when you save the form. So how do you do the change tracking? Well, here are some steps, and I'm going to quickly show you how I did this in my form. But before I do, let me just quickly go through these. So you're going to add a repeating group to your form, and you'll add some fields underneath it to track the changes. You'll create the default rows in this group, and this is one of the tricks, because if you don't have default rows, you can't do this. And then you'll add rules to basically set the fields as they're getting changed. And these rules fire with no condition. And then what you'll do is you'll copy that rule to all your other fields in your form. And this is a little bit time-consuming depending on how many fields you have, but you have to do it just once. And then you'll add conditional filtering. This is optional. We'll see. I only show, when I'm on a field, I only show the history for that field. I don't look at everything else in the form, but you can show everything as well. And then there's one more last trick that you have to do, which is you have to disable the refresh on the ID value. So let's take a look. So here's a sample form. Now we've got two samples for you today. We've got this sample, and we've got InfoPath Starter form, which we usually sell, and you'll get a free version of that with Q-rules baked into it, and this new field level change tracking if you fill out a survey at the end of the webinar. But if you don't want Q-rules, this form here is what you want to look at. This is completely out of box, and that last form, the InfoPath Starter form, comes with Q-rules, which means that you don't have to worry about buying Q-rules because it's baked in. But if you want to inject Q-rules in your forms, then there's the promo there I mentioned earlier. But this form here is completely out of the box, and you can see here I've got two text boxes in my form. and I've got a repeating table down below that shows the history. Now, what I've got here is I've got two repeating tables. I've got one that shows everything, this one down here, and then I've got one that shows just the field that changed. So let's take a look at this in the browser, and this is all totally browser compatible. So I'm going to go to my change tracking form here that I published on our 365 site, and you can see that I've been typing into this form. I've been typing in some values, alpha, beta. So if I go back and type in gamma here for text box 1, you can see that I previously entered in beta and alpha, and you can see the time when I did that earlier, a few moments ago. If I change text box 2 from banana to carrot, you can see that I see the values for text box 2. It used to be apple, and then I changed it to banana about 10 seconds later. And if I change it again to, what's the fruit that starts with a D? Dorian? I forget how to spell it. Well, let's just say, drawing a blank here, let's just skip to something that I know about, pineapple. So you can see here that I don't show the current value, I show the previous values. And you can see that there's the carrot that I added at 8:15 to this morning. Okay, so that's how it works. Now, one caveat here is that when I tab out of the field, and let's go from alpha, beta, gamma to, well, we're probably in the wrong order here, but let's go to Romeo. And you can see here that when I do that, there's a slight post back. I don't know if you saw that or not, but it's very slight. Actually, there's you can see that there's flashes there for a second. Very fast though in 365, a very nice performance. So that's what we're really doing here. How did we do it? Well, what happens is I've got a rule on these two text boxes, and I think I made a mistake here, and I copied something down I didn't mean to. Okay, so on these two text boxes, I have rules. And if you look at the rules here, I've got this one rule, which sets the history. Now, the history is a field in the form. You can see here that I've got this group, history, with a repeating change group underneath it. Now, and this is what you have to add to your form. You have to add this history group with these three fields and this change group. Now, we did not create an XML template part for you, but we could have. And the reason why we didn't was we just didn't have time. But so what you'll do is you'll just, if you want to add this to a new form, you'll just go through the steps I mentioned. You'll add these fields to your form, and then you'll set the rules. And you can look at this form while you're doing it. So when we run, when the text box changes, see there's no condition there, it automatically sets these two values, the current XPath and the current value. Now the XPath is the location of the field in the data source. And you can see here that in InfoPath Designer, there's a command for copying the XPath, and that just refers to the fact that we're using an XML path to get to that node. So the XPath is a reference, a unique reference to the field in your form. So we set those values, XPath and current value, and then we have rules on the current value that runs another rule, so that we have a trigger here. So when current value gets set, we toggle all the rows. Now, why do we toggle the rows? Well, you can see here in the data source underneath change, I've got this field called toggle, right? Well, this is the trick. So what we've done is we've added a bunch of items to our default values. We have, in fact, added, I think, 10 different rows here. And this is the one trick, and it's also a bit of a caveat, because if you have lots of change history, you essentially have to add lots of these blank rows. Because we're setting this toggle value, it sets the toggle column for all of those 10 default rows. And then what we do is we have a rule that says if this is the most current version, if we're on the, and ID will be, current will be 1 at the very beginning, or is, I think it's 1. Let me check the default value here. Yes, it's 1. So current value is 1 to begin with. So the very first time we hit toggle, we have a rule that says only for the first row do we want to do this stuff. And what we're doing is we're just copying the previous value. We're copying the change value, the location of the change, when it was modified, and who did it. This is the username. We just copy those four values in, and we only do it for that, the first item. And then what we do is, if we go look back here, you can see that we have a rule that changes current and makes it current plus 1. So that increments the count. So after we do 1, the next time we're going to do it's going to be for 2, and so on. Now we could do minus if you want to, but we have to start off at the maximum. We don't know what that is here. We can get the maximum count using our count function. So you can do it either from 1, 2, 3, 4, or you can do it backwards from 100 to 99 to 98. But you will have to add those default rows to your default values section. That's the one trick there. Okay, and then we have filtering. So right here, I believe, we have a conditional formatting that hides the section initially, and then we hide it if we're not showing all, we hide it. And then we have one down here for individual field tracking. So this only shows you the one you're on. So if we were to go back to our presentation here, our demo, we can click on Show All Values, and we would see all of the changes we made to the form. Is that right? It doesn't look right. Oh, it just shows all for that field. So it shows the most current value as well. Well, that's kind of strange, but that's what that does. So we might want to change that because we really want to show everything that changed. And right now we're only filtering it to show the values that for the field that changed. But you could show all of the field values. You don't have to limit it to just those values that are for the field that's changing. So then what we did was we added to a new form. Okay, so any questions on that? So what I just showed was I showed a form that has change tracking on a field level basis. I showed you how we did it using a repeating table and a repeating group and setting a column for that table and using a toggle. And then if the row is equal to the current ID that you're on, it does a copy. So it only copies once per set, and that's how we do it with out-of-box support. So it's a little bit tricky, but it can be done. Now we did another version of this, and let me just show you a more interesting version. So here's our starter form, and this is a starter form that you get as part of this. I just opened it up, and I've been filling it out. And this starter form has a bunch of different tabs. It has some techniques in here that you can read about. We've been using this in our webinars to try to show you these techniques. And I've been updating this company value here, so let me just add in Acme. And I'll change, so you see here that down below we have this change history section in this form, and previously, the previous value was Qdabra, and then Qdabra software. Now I've got Acme products there. If I were to change it one more time, then you'll see that Acme shows up. And the same is true for contact name. We've got every single one of these fields. I forget what his name is, the new guy. You can see here that we had previously, I was the contact. We'll say, well, Bill's back in action, so we'll give Bill the floor. So you see we've done it for every single field here in the form. We've got that change tracking showing up. Now you don't have to show this. You can just keep it, but you know what changed because it's all being recorded. And so that's our starter form, and you'll get a copy of that as well. This has a bunch of really cool features in it. You can read about some of the features there. Okay, so that's how we did it, and those were the demos. And so like I said, this is going to be a quick demo for you this morning. We're at about the about the 18-minute mark. If you've got questions for me, I'm more than happy to answer them. I also want to quickly talk about a few other things. We've got webinars coming up. You can view the YouTube video. You can view. We have a lot of different webinars on YouTube, and we have a channel, and the channel is called Qdabra. And you can go up there and you can view everything we've done. We have 2 upcoming webinars. We're very pleased to work with K2. They're going to be doing a webinar next week to talk about their smart forms technology and Appit. App is being launched this month. For those of you who are interested in that, just click on the link. You'll get this presentation as part of the, well, you can see here the link is content.k2.com, Qdabra_, and there's a long number, 70114000002U, lowercase us3. So you can go to that, or you can just click on the link in the presentation that you get to register for that, and that's next week. So we will not be doing a Qdabra webinar next week, but we'll be working with K2 when they do theirs. And then we have a webinar the following week on PDF share forms, and this is our second take on their technology. So once again at Qdabra, we're trying to be technology agnostic here. Technology is changing so rapidly, and we want to provide a help to our customers. We're customer focused, and regardless of the technology you use, we're here to help you with your e-forms. And that's really our pivot, given that Microsoft has deprecated InfoPath. We're sort of moving closer to the center to support everyone with e-form technology. We still think InfoPath is the best technology out there, and it will continue to be for many years, but there are some alternatives. So we have some questions from the audience. Just one question, Greg, thank you. In your opinion, what is the break-even point for the number of fields on a form where it starts impacting performance or development time? That's a great question. I think that what I would say is, well, we've just done this, right? And we have actually 3 other forms that we've done the same technique on in the past. We had one form that had 200 fields, so that's obviously not the break point. So for most forms out there, this should work just fine. The one caveat, though, is that you have to add those default rows, which can be a nuisance manually, but you just have to do it once. And you can crack open the XSN, go in there, and manually do it, batch way. That's a lot easier, but that's a bit of an advanced technique. We might want to cover that later. I would say that there is a little bit of a performance. Did you see on the InfoPath starter form, the display time is a little bit slower? I haven't figured out why that is, but because we just got this done this morning. But the sample form is a lot quicker in the browser. Obviously, if you're using the filler, you won't have any post back to the server. But great question, Greg. Thank you for asking it. Another question from Steve, is InfoPath in Office 365? You bet. E3, Office 365, the SKU, the plan is E3, the Enterprise 3, and that has InfoPath Browser and InfoPath, and it has the highest level of support for InfoPath of anything out there. It has the sandbox turned on. You can run code. The InfoPath starter form has code in it, but the sample I showed earlier does not. So you can do all this in 365 if you have the E3 plan. Great question, Steve. Another question from Greg, how does the form print? Well, I mean, printing is obviously, you can do it in lots of different ways. If you're going to print out the audit history, you'd obviously want to put that on a separate print view, maybe format it differently and show everything, but you could definitely do it. So hopefully that answers your question. If you've got more questions, keep them coming. I'll be here for a minute or so. Just want to go back to our free swag here. Don't forget to fill out the survey. We've got just 3 questions for you today, or 3 or 4. Very simple, and here to help you with any things you need done. If you have trouble with this technique, don't hesitate to let us know. Email support@qdabra.com, and we're happy to assist you. Are there any more questions? Well, I hope you have a wonderful day, and it's been a pleasure presenting to you this morning. We'll get this webinar up on YouTube, and for those of you who filled out the survey, we'll send out the package in a few hours. Thank you so much for being here.